On body shaming. It's not a new concept, whether it was the mean girls in middle school or on the pages of the tabloids, but the internet and social media have certainly made it more rampant.
That's right, Hazel. And when Adele recently released her new album, many people paid more attention to her weight loss than to her actual music, some even saying she had gotten too skinny.
Yeah, and just last week, actor Jonah Hill, remember this? He sparked a new conversation on body image when he posted on Instagram, quote, "I know you mean well, but I kindly ask that you not comment on my body, good or bad. I want to politely let you know it's not helpful and it doesn't feel good."
To talk more about this concept of scrutinizing other people's bodies is clinical psychologist Alexis Conason, author of The Diet-Free Revolution. She joins us now. Good morning. Thank you for being here with us.
Hi, good morning.
So I wanted to start with Jonah Hill because Hazel and I were talking about this concept that in more recent times, body shaming is not exclusive to women, that men are also the subject of body shaming. So is it something that female celebrities have been asking for years? So why did Jonah's request seem to resonate more?
Well, I think that women and marginalized folks have been talking about the idea of body shaming and asking people, please, just not to comment on our bodies for decades. But Jonah Hill is bringing it more into the mainstream conversation. I think that's really a great thing. Sometimes we just need a white man to say what other people have been saying for a long time to get people to listen.
So is the concern more about, is it about the specific comments or really the overall focus on other people's bodies?
I think that overall, the focus on other people's bodies is hugely problematic. I mean, there's so much more to us than what our bodies look like, and it's really damaging to feel that we're constantly being evaluated for the size of our body, being denied access to things because of the size of our body, being made to feel like we're not good enough. It's a really pervasive issue that causes a lot of harm.
Yeah, why do you think people are so compelled to talk about other people's physique, or even, right in doing it right in front of their face?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as a culture, we're really indoctrinated into this idea that our value stems from what we look like, especially for women. We're really valued for the size of our body and trying to conform our body to meet this impossible ideal. So, most of us from like the youngest ages have just been taught that how we look is really important and the size of our body is really important. So thankfully, I think there's a little bit of a movement now to kind of shift away from that and help people recognize that we have so many more important, so much more powerful things to do with our lives than trying to shrink ourselves to conform to this really impossible ideal.
Yeah, impossible. And I think we can thank, fortunately or unfortunately, social media, right? Because I'm like this on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, look at this, and it becomes addictive. But when it comes to weight, we talk a lot about fat shaming. For years, we have been, and we mentioned Adele earlier. And in her career, she was the target of fat shaming, like it was nobody's business. Now she's being targeted by some for her weight loss, and some are calling it skinny shaming. Can you explain what that is, and how big of a problem is it becoming?
Well, I think that a lot of people were upset about Adele's weight loss because she had become kind of this icon for people in larger bodies to see that we can, have representation. But at the end of the day, she's a human, an individual, and she gets to make choices about how, what she wants to do with our body. And I think that skinny shaming is this idea that people are criticized for being too thin, and it happens. I don't think it's at all the same thing as fat shaming, because fat shaming involves systemic discrimination and lack of access, job-based discrimination, medical discrimination. It has a profound impact. But overall, I think if we just stick to Jonah Hill's advice of not commenting on other people's bodies, that's going to lead us in the right direction.
Why do you think that it doesn't have as much of a personal impact to be skinny shamed as opposed to fat shamed? Because I know, it's for little girls, that are growing up in this environment now, when you say, oh, you're so skinny, to some of them, they're like, oh, that's a compliment, So why do you think that it's not as damaging as fat?
So I think Yeah, on a personal level, it can be. It can be really damaging. But because thin bodies are idealized and valued in our culture, we don't have the systemic bias, that we have if you're living in a larger body. So, for example, someone who's teased at school for being too thin, that can be traumatic and have a profound impact. But they're not going to face the same obstacles that someone in a larger body would have, for example, of being denied. Being denied jobs or promotions, being paid less than, lower weight peers. Educationally, we know that kids in larger bodies tend to be kind of seen by their teachers as not as successful, not as smart. So that sets them down a different path. So, on a personal level, whenever somebody is bullied or teased for whatever reason, it's incredibly painful. And I don't want to at all diminish the impact that being criticized for your body can have. But I do think it's different because our culture is overall set up to value thin bodies and to disparage larger bodies. And that creates a whole other, host of obstacles for people in larger bodies who are not only dealing with, also being criticized and bullied and teased, but denied access to basic things like even healthcare and, job security.
It's impossible to have this conversation without talking about the culture, because you mentioned culture, and there are so many different subcultures. Because I can tell you, growing up in a Puerto Rican family, I was too skinny. My sister was, too skinny, or I was too skinny, because they saw being thin as, you're emaciated and you don't have access to wonderful things. So I think it's different in Black and brown communities, where your body takes on a completely different role, a completely different meaning. And I wonder how you make that delineation when you talk about the culture, because, I think in general, in white culture, being skinny means one thing, but in Black and brown communities, it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, you're skinny, you're going to be successful. So how do you square that disparity? It's a difficult task, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important point that you bring up, and that we have to take these cultural differences into account. However, I think that it is important to look at the dominant culture that people are living in. And for example, whether you are in a Black, brown, or white community, when you go out to try to get a job, or to try and get on an airplane with a seat that might fit you, or be in a restaurant with a seat that may not accommodate you, those are kind of consistent systemic barriers that people in larger bodies do face, that people in smaller bodies don't face. So again, like culturally, I think there's a ton of impact in terms of how we as individuals develop our body image, and certainly negative body image. I love that you have the NIDA information up there. It can be a huge risk factor for the onset of eating disorders. But, in terms of just getting access to services, to medical care, to these general things, I think our culture the system is set up to prioritize smaller body people.
Yeah, well, we do appreciate you talking about this very important topic that affects men, women, and all races in different ways. Dr. Alexis Conason, thanks again for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.